He didn't move her shoes, not the first day, not the second, not even weeks later, when the house began to sound too still. They were just simple canvas sneakers, soft pink, worn at the heels, the kind she always left turned slightly inward, like she'd stepped out in a hurry and planned to come right back. But she didn't. And now, every time he walked past the door, they sat there, waiting. It was strange, the things he couldn't bring himself to touch. He'd changed her bedsheets, donated her jackets, boxed up her notebooks with trembling hands, but not the shoes. Maybe because they weren't part of the past. They were part of that last, normal morning. The morning she said, "See you tonight, Dad," with that half grin, already tugging on her backpack. And he, distracted, just waved without looking up. He hadn't said it back. That moment lived inside the shoes now, the goodbye he never gave, still standing there in soft rubber soles. Sometimes he'd stand near them, as if expecting to hear her footsteps rush through the door again. He never did. But still, he left them there. He told himself he'd move them tomorrow. He said that for 83 tomorrows. But he never did. Because the day he did, the house would no longer expect her to return, and neither would he. The kettle still whistled at 7:10 a.m. every morning, just like it used to. He didn't need an alarm anymore. Muscle memory had taken over. Wake up. Boil water. 2 cups of tea. Her favorite mug still sat on the counter. Clean, unused, untouched. It was white, with a small cracked handle and a faded cartoon fox on the front. She called it the Sleepy Fox mug. He didn't drink from it. He just filled it. Let the steam rise. Let it cool. Then poured it down the sink. He made toast too, 2 slices. One with butter and raspberry jam, the way she liked. The other plain. He sat across from the empty chair and laid out the breakfast like it was still any other day. He didn't cry during these mornings. That came later, in the silence between crumbs and memory, in the way the chair didn't move, even a little. Sometimes he'd speak softly. "Morning, bug," he'd say, like he used to. The words hung in the air awkwardly now, unanswered and too loud for the room. He hated how quiet the world had become. Even the birds outside the window seemed to know not to sing too loud. After breakfast, he folded her napkin. Not because it was dirty, but because it made him feel like she might come back and need it again. It was routine, something to do with his hands. Something to replace the things they used to do together, like folding laundry and sorting the mail. She always hated how he folded towels, said he did it backwards. Now he folded everything her way, always. The mornings had started to stretch longer since she passed. He used to rush, toast in hand, checking his watch, telling her to grab her backpack. Now he stayed seated, sometimes for hours. The house didn't rush him anymore. But no matter what, he never skipped the tea, never skipped her toast, and never once moved the Sleepy Fox mug from its place on the table. It stayed right where it belonged, waiting, like the shoes by the door. He kept the door closed at first, not because he was afraid of what was inside, but because he knew exactly what was. Her room had always been a little messy, not dirty, just full of life. Books stacked in strange places, pencils in mugs instead of drawers, notes taped to the mirror that made no sense unless you knew her. Now, everything inside had gone still. It wasn't a bedroom anymore. It was a museum of what he lost. After 2 weeks, he opened it, slowly, as if even the hinges remembered her and groaned in protest. The air was stale, but it smelled like her. Eucalyptus lotion, dry shampoo, the faintest hint of that vanilla candle she kept burning too long. Her hoodie was still on the chair, a sock on the floor. Her headphones curled on the pillow like she might walk in, untangle them, and disappear under the blanket again. He didn't clean. Not at first. He just stood there, letting the quiet wrap around him. His hand found the edge of her dresser, fingertips grazing the wood like it might answer back. She used to draw on the surface with the edge of her nail, tiny spirals. Hearts, stars. He never noticed them while she was alive. Now he traced them like scripture. A half-finished school project sat on the floor by her backpack, a diorama she never glued the final piece onto. He crouched and looked inside. It was supposed to be a miniature of the solar system. Saturn had fallen sideways, and the sun was crooked. He smiled, just barely. "You always rushed the glue," he whispered. He sat on her bed and stared at the ceiling. He didn't cry. Not then. He just let himself feel small in the space she made hers. The posters. The fairy lights she never turned off. The closet still holding the weight of her favorite jacket. He was afraid to open it, as if letting air in would somehow take her out. Eventually, he folded the hoodie, smoothed the pillow. He didn't take anything away. He just straightened what was there, like setting the room before a guest arrives, or before someone comes home. And then he walked out, gently closing the door behind him. Not all the way, just enough that he could still see the edge of her blanket through the crack. He told himself it was to let air in, but really, he just couldn't bear to shut her out. It started one evening, when the sky turned that bruised purple just before night falls. He was making pasta. Nothing fancy, just the kind she liked. Overcooked noodles. Too much cheese. He caught himself stirring and saying out loud, "Don't worry, I'm not putting mushrooms this time." The words left his mouth before his brain could catch them. He froze, spoon in hand, listening to a silence that had nothing to say back. But he kept talking, not all the time, just here and there, small things. "You'd hate this song. When the radio played something awful. Your cactus is still alive. Somehow. When he watered the tiny plant on her windowsill. He wasn't imagining her replies. He didn't believe in ghosts. But speaking the words made the house feel less hollow. Grief didn't shout in his life. It whispered. It slipped into the spaces between sound. In the hum of the refrigerator. In the click of the light switch. In the way his voice echoed a little too much now. He started leaving the TV on, just to fill the room with something. He'd sit in her chair sometimes, holding a warm mug and pretending for a second that he was just keeping her seat warm until she came back from school. There was a day, maybe a month after she passed, when he tried to record his voice talking to her. He thought maybe it would help, a kind of therapy. He sat on the couch with his phone, hit record, and said, "Hi, kid. I made your toast this morning. You'd be proud. Only burned one side." Then he stopped, pressed pause, and listened to how empty his voice sounded in playback. He deleted the file without saving. Still, he kept talking, out loud, quietly, in the way a person prays, not expecting answers, just needing the release. Sometimes he'd forget she wasn't there and start to ask something. "Did you see where I put the keys?" Before catching himself mid-sentence, the words crashing into the air like a missed step in the dark. But the worst part wasn't when he spoke. It was when he almost stopped. The day he went an entire afternoon without thinking of her, and felt a wave of guilt so strong he had to sit down. He whispered her name like an apology. "I didn't forget you," he said to the empty hallway. "I promise." The house never answered, but the quiet always listened. It happened gradually. The calls stopped coming as often. The neighbors stopped pausing in the driveway to ask how he was holding up. Even his sister, kind, well-meaning, had started ending their conversations with, "You should try to get out more." No one said anything wrong. But that was the thing about loss. Eventually, the world expected you to tuck it away, like an old photograph you only take out on holidays. One afternoon, his friend dropped by with a bag of groceries and too much cheer in his voice. "You look better," he said, like it was a compliment, like healing was something you could measure by the neatness of your beard or how well you stood when opening the door. They had coffee, talked about things that didn't matter, and the whole time, the father kept thinking, "I made her toast this morning. I poured her tea. Her shoes are still right there by the door." But he didn't say that. He smiled, nodded, laughed at a joke about politics, because the world wanted him to participate again. It wanted him to speak in full sentences and answer emails and say he was doing better. So he did. Sort of. He learned how to wear his sadness like a second shirt, something close to the skin, invisible if no one looked too hard. The hardest part was the mail. Every few days, something would arrive in her name. A magazine subscription, a reminder about an upcoming dental appointment. One time, a letter from her school counselor. It wasn't personal, just a list of college resources. But he read every word like scripture. And when he finished, he folded the paper, placed it in her desk drawer, and closed it gently. At the grocery store, a cashier asked if he wanted to donate to a children's hospital. He did, without hesitation, then stood there, frozen, staring at the small sign with a cartoon heart. She used to draw hearts on everything. Her notebooks, the fogged-up bathroom mirror, the window of the car when she was bored. He started seeing them everywhere after that. Heart shapes in the cracks of the pavement, in tea stains on the counter, in the way her shoelaces curled on the floor. It wasn't magical. It wasn't spiritual. But it was something. And it was his. Everyone else started forgetting. But he remembered every little thing. Not just her face, her habits, her rhythms, the sound of her feet on the stairs, the way she hummed while brushing her teeth, the little dance she did when she got something right. She was still everywhere in that house, and her shoes were still by the door. It wasn't dramatic. There was no thunder, no aching music in the background. Just a regular Saturday. He was vacuuming, for the first time in a while, trying to pretend that it was just routine. Clean the hallway, shake out the rug, keep the dust from settling too deep. He didn't mean to get that close to the door. He didn't plan to move them. But when he turned around, the vacuum cord caught the heel of one shoe and nudged it sideways. He froze, completely, the hum of the vacuum still running in the background like static. But his body was locked. One shoe had shifted, just an inch out of place. And for some reason, that single inch felt unbearable. He dropped to his knees before he even knew what he was doing. Reached out. His hand hovered just above the shoe. He could have picked it up, could have straightened it, could have walked it to the closet and told himself it was time. But his fingers didn't move. Instead, he sat there on the floor. His breathing went uneven, like something inside him had cracked. He rested his forehead against the wall, just beside the shoes, and whispered, "Okay." Not because he was okay, but because it was the only word he had left. After a long while, he reached down and turned the shoe back, gently, reverently, just so, exactly where it had been. A few centimeters didn't seem like much to anyone else, but to him, it was where she had left them, and that still mattered. The vacuum stayed unplugged in the hallway for the rest of the day. He made tea, sat by the window, and let the stillness fill the space between things. That night, he dreamed of her. Just a flash, her walking up the stairs in those same pink sneakers, laughing about something she forgot to tell him earlier. He didn't remember the words when he woke up, only the sound of her voice. And when he got out of bed, he walked past the door, glanced down, and smiled. They were still there. And so was she. Spring came slowly that year, the kind of spring that doesn't arrive with blossoms and birdsong, but with tiny, nearly invisible shifts. A slightly warmer breeze through the open window, a beam of sunlight that reached just a little farther across the kitchen floor. He noticed it because he had been standing in the same spot for months, filling 2 mugs, even when only one was needed. That morning, he only filled one. Not because he had forgotten, not because he was moving on, but because something had softened in him. A kind of surrender, maybe. Not to the loss, but to the love that kept showing up in quieter forms. He still talked to her, not every day, but often. Little things. "I fixed the drawer," or "Your cactus bloomed." It didn't hurt the same way it used to. The ache was still there, but it had changed shape. It had become something he could carry. He started opening the bedroom window again, letting in the air. He played her favorite songs, the ones she used to hum when she thought no one could hear. Sometimes he'd find himself smiling, just a little, at the sound of her in his memory. And the shoes, they stayed, right by the door, not as a shrine, not as a refusal to let go, but as a promise, a quiet one, that she had been real, that she had been loved, that she had walked this house, laughed in these rooms, touched every part of it with her presence. People still told him it was time to move forward, time to donate what was left. But he didn't explain. He didn't need to. Some things weren't meant to be packed away. One day, while dusting the hallway, he knelt beside the shoes. He didn't cry. He just placed a small flower inside the left one. A wildflower, purple, slightly wilted, something she would have picked for no reason at all. And then he whispered, "You can rest now." Not for her, but for himself. He stood up, walked to the kitchen, poured a single cup of tea. And when the sunlight touched the table, he didn't look away.
I still set the table, still pour your tea, still leave the light on, like you're walking back to me. No one sees it, but I do. The shoes where you left them, facing the door, like you just stepped through. And I don't move them, I don't try. Some things hold love better than goodbye. I talk to the quiet when I walk these halls. Your voice is still there in the light on the wall. I folded your sweater, let the window breathe. I caught myself smiling at nothing you said to me. They tell me to move on, but you're never gone. You're the reason the sun still finds the blinds at dawn. So I won't move them, not today. There's love in that corner where the silence stays. You live in the soft things that no one recalls, in the hush before sleep and the light in the hall. I see